My name is Judah McNeil. I'm pleased to be with Ford Suze and Jared Putnam. We're about to jump right into it as we hash out. Now, a quick monologue. There are those that do not appreciate the world of Westeros. There are those that have not partaken in the battles between the families, between the banners. I would say there's much to be learned. I think we talk more than just the plot. We talk more than just the characters. What we go deeper than that, and we find application in other ways. We tie different strands of our lives together with this. I would say with this allegory of a lot of different aspects of everyone's life, everyone's conflict with others, and how to resolve that. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah, I heard part of what you said. I feel like a boxer who's ready to come out of the corner, and he's getting advice from he's getting advice from the trainer, and he's kind of just hearing part of it, but he's just ready to go. No. I agree. I agree with what you said, though.
Okay. Well, so in one corner we have Jared. He's seen a lot of reaction videos. In the other corner, we have Ford. He's really full. I got nothing. So let's go.
He's probably seen a lot of reaction. He's probably seen some reaction videos.
Yeah.
Not as many as you, dude.
Not as many as me. No one's seen as many as me.
You should start a reaction to the reactions. Like that's I mean, you could
I could
point out the good and bad in the reaction to the reactions.
I did live stream me watching the finale.
I watched almost the whole live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was actually my only experience of the final episode was through Jared's eyes.
Really? You haven't watched it?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, Jared.
All right, so these are the rules of the game. There are no rules of the game. Let's get started. Jared, you start. Can we hear do you have just an overall sort of final word on the full 8 seasons?
Oh gosh. It's really hard. It's really hard for me to give a full word on the full 8 seasons. Okay. I think I was going to say, I wasn't sure how much we were just focusing on the finale and how much we were going to focus on, the season or the whole thing.
Yeah. Let him say what he's going to say. You had something to come out with your routine.
Oh, okay. So I'll just start with the final episode. So I don't hate the finale. This is what I wrote. Somewhere on social media. I don't hate the finale as a standalone episode, but the best way I can describe it is that it feels like a Marvel what if story. And What If was an old line of comics that gave you alternate versions to big events, and they were pretty great. There's actually going to be a What If Marvel series on Disney's new streaming service. What if stories are like, what if Peter Parker's Uncle Ben hadn't died? What if Peter Parker had become the Punisher instead of Spider-Man? It was interesting to see how much different, sometimes better, sometimes worse, things could have been if one moment in history had unfolded just a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. So this finale and Game of Thrones Season 8 as a whole felt like a what if story. What if Dany went crazy at the end of the series? What if Jon had to kill her? What if they made Bran king? It's an interesting and cool concept, but it doesn't feel like the story we built up to for 7+ seasons until these last 3 episodes. And look, I'm not bummed about so many characters getting a happy ending. Apart from Team Dany and Team Cersei, most of the other characters got a happy-ish ending. The finale was maybe the most beautifully shot episode in Game of Thrones history, and the music was on point as always. And most importantly, Jon pet Ghost. It unfortunately just didn't feel to me like the ending we built toward for 7+ seasons, and I'm not a fan of subverting expectations to deliver surprises in place of earned narrative closure. So for a series that delivered so many great moments, it's a weird and disappointing feeling to be walking away feeling mostly meh.
Counterpoint, Ford.
Okay, if we're looking at armed conflict in the 20th century, we start with World War I, which was hell, just absolute hell. Just everyone, I think, rightfully looks back at World War I as just like, this does not really adhere to narrative closure. But then you look at World War II, and we watch Band of Brothers, and we feel like there's some narrative closure there. We do feel like the winners, and we feel justified. And there aren't that many people. There aren't that many Nazis on Earth who are like, no, we're still around, and we're willing to, we're willing to fight to the end. I mean, there's a minority of people who think that way of viewing the world, a Third Reich or Fourth Reich, should rise from the ashes or something like that. But I think that it's pretty much moot. It's not the winners that wrote that history book. It's reality that wrote that history book. So from there, you move on to the Korean War and then the Vietnam War. And all these wars we've had since then, they don't follow that upward trajectory from hell to heaven. It's gotten really become a morass. Vietnam is a crap show. I'm sorry, it's not my show. Are we PG or PG-13? PG-ish. Okay, yeah. So it's not good. When you look at some of the armed conflicts we've gotten in, and they don't follow any sort of Aristotelian narrative structure. And that's what Game of Thrones is about. It's not about a real Aristotelian structure. From a Ned Stark fan's point of view, season 1 was terrible. From Robb Stark's point of view, season 3 was terrible. There's no Joffrey Baratheon fans, so we didn't have to worry about them being angry. From a fan of the Sparrow, that season, the way it ended, was terrible. But all of these things, in light of enough information, seemed inevitable. I think it is my theory that season 8, now I agree with you, Jared, and a lot of the reaction videos, they bungled the beats. They bungled the tapestry, I guess, like the sewing of these moments together. But the moments that are still controversial in most people's minds, Danny going crazy, John being relegated north of the wall, these moments I think are going to make sense once George R.R. Martin reveals what's in the box. And unlike Lost, we're actually going to see what's in that box because it's going to be in his books, provided, God willing, he doesn't die. So
yeah,
finish writing it, George. Jeez Louise.
Okay,
but I think this is a marketing campaign by George. We're blaming Dave and Dan or whatever, the Dumb and Dumber. We're blaming them. But I think Martin has played a part in this as well, because he doesn't want to give everything away. We have not seen what Bran has been doing. He has not been idle. It was like, that one meme. Oh, yeah, when you didn't do any homework, but you got all the credit in the group project. It's like, no, evidence of absence is not, I'm sorry. Is there evidence? Absence of evidence? Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So just because we didn't see it on screen doesn't mean it didn't happen. So whatever, Bran was orchestrating some stuff. I think we're going to get on the other side and realize things that look like dumb, stupid human motivations or just bad writing was Bran like little fingering via warging. Like Bran was pulling more strings because the power of Bran is vastly underestimated in fan culture, I think.
Estimated?
Underestimated.
Yes, but it's vastly under portrayed as well.
Right.
That is true. They did hold back on that, but again, I think that might be a little bit more of Martin's to blame than the showrunners to blame. I think he wanted people to forget. It's a narrative tactic. I do not think it's subversion in the same way that Last Jedi tried to subvert arbitrarily. I think he's trying to get you to think that the show should go in some way because you want an Aristotelian plot arc, and he's not going to give you an Aristotelian plot arc.
All right. You started strong, then you got into mind reading. I think if as someone who waited on George R.R. Martin for 7 years to come out with his last book, I would say don't hold your breath. The man is not he is not young, and he is not in a hurry.
Okay, I'll say something here. Let's assume, though, let's give Ford the benefit of the doubt and say that he's right.
Okay.
So, in order for this TV show that I just watched to make sense, maybe 10 years down the road, if I want to read a massive novel, it will go back and make sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not in the era of we're not in the era of traditional storytelling arcs. I mean, this is a saga. You know, people don't have a problem with the MCU being 40 movies, and that's not a movie. So I think it's a different, just because, why apply the rules of, let's say, Lost to Game of Thrones when I feel like Lost broke its rules, Jared, and not giving us a satisfying final.
Point forward.
I'm not applying even really like story rules as much as just like practical. Well, some of them are story rules because the books and the show are different. There's characters than the books
Yes.
that are still alive, that died in the show, and characters have. I think one of the things that D&D did well was they, gave certain storylines from minor characters to bigger characters to try to condense that. In one example is in the books, it's. I think it's a Manderley that actually bakes the Freys into the pie and feeds them to Walder Frey. So they gave Arya that storyline because that makes complete sense. They
compress it, right?
Yeah, and give it to a character that you care about. We care about Arya. Arya was the one at the Red Wedding. She was the one that had to suffer through being there and not being able to save her family. It makes her, it's more satisfying narratively. For us to have that kind of happen through her eyes. But I'm just talking about just from a practical standpoint. I mean, like 10 years down the road in my life,
I do, but George R.R. Martin, I mean, there's so many things to blame for it. I think just to blame the show itself for it. So one thing to blame would be, like you said, because he has such a sprawling narrative, and this is one of, I think, mine and Judah's complaints with the books, is there's just so much boredom in there that just nothing is happening. It just reads like an old theological treatise, or something. You get the punchline comes at the end of the chapter, and you're like, okay, yeah, that was pretty good punchline. I don't know if it was worth 40 pages though. It just seems to be meandering character development of these people that we've never even met before.
Particularly in the last book. In his last book.
Yes, I was just trying to read some of it, and it seems like, man, wait a minute, this hasn't even happened yet. I'm like, this is the reason I like the shows, is because they compress so much. And you're right, they did it with much more facility in the first 5 seasons and 6 seasons. And I agree too. Like, they gave Arya too much, in my opinion. Like, she becomes incredibly overpowered in a brief period of time. But it's like you said, they needed to wrap it up. Like they wanted to get the idea across of subverting the expectation that the Night King was what everything was about. But they just needed a variable to do that. And so they had to look at the list of characters. So it's, again, like, Martin has a beat that he wants them to hit, but they don't have the actual proper character to do what they thought. It's like an unsolvable puzzle, really. I feel like a lot of the decisions they made, there wasn't really a great option. And I think one of the reasons they were running out of time is we really take it for granted just how grandiose the show has been. It's 8 seasons of long episodes that are very expensive, that are at almost a film level, feature film level. You think about like Sherlock seasons, there's only 3 hour-and-a-half episodes. Whereas this, it's just so much screen time, and to actually be able to execute at that level with so many people who are superstars now.
Yeah.
But trying to keep all these people together, like, good luck with that.
HBO came to them and said, we'll give you as many more episodes. We need more episodes. I mean, it wasn't just that they didn't have 10 seasons. They made the last season only 6 episodes.
Yeah. I know, but things are more complicated like that. It's like people complaining about Firefly never coming back. Like, I mean, there's a lot of political ramifications that people do not see behind the scenes. And so
that cuts both ways.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it's not just the showrunners that made that decision. There was probably some of the actors who are way more popular than they would, who wanted to be in movies, who wanted to be in their own shows, blah, blah, blah.
Or think they're more popular than
probably
because
so.
a year from now, this Thrones bump is going to die down,
I
and
agree.
all of these actors who've been writing, I think Kit Harington is one of them. Like they did in an interview with Amelia Clark, who has been, if you've seen some of the interviews she's done, like one of the most vocal in terms of like being disappointed with the way things played out.
Right.
And they even ask her, like, would you come back and do another season? And she basically said yes, or they're basically like ask her about redoing the season or something like that. She basically said yes, but like couched it in the way of like, oh well, I would have really just loved to have had more scenes with Lena Headey and certain things like this. Like Kit Harington, on the other hand, sorry, is my audio a little?
It's a little high. I just adjusted it.
Okay. Kit Harington, on the other hand, was just like, yeah, we were just, I was just glad we made it to the end and stuff like that. So I do think you may have a point with, with some of that stuff, though. There's just certain things that that D&D have said that makes me think they just didn't understand the scope of the story they were trying to compress into these episodes. Because I saw, it wasn't one of the inside the episode things. It was actually one of the longer, like little episode documentaries that they've done this season that are like 45 minutes long or something like that. And they were talking about how when they shot the pilot, they had to redo almost the entire pilot. They were talking about how they had to, this was their first time helming something like this. And so they were talking about some of the problems that they had with the pilot, and where they filmed it and then they let like a small group of people watch it. And at the end of the episode, where, which finishes with Jamie and Cersei having sex, Bran catching them, and Jamie pushing him out of the tower, everyone was going, so are those two characters related in somehow? Like that it didn't even come across to them that like they didn't get it across to people that they were related. And so we can say, well, okay, that's fine. That's understandable. They've had 8 seasons to, improve. They're not going to be making those same mistakes. But ending a show is different than beginning a show. And if you haven't done that before, you're going to run into things that you couldn't expect, especially when they don't have books to go off of. And so I think they underestimated trying to cram some believable character turns into a couple of episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that.
Just parenthetically, on the topic of the characters being in other movies, I'm thinking about Kit Harington was in that horror movie. Lena Headey, she's had a long, she had a career. But who plays Cersei? I mean, who plays Dany?
Amelia
Clark.
Yeah. Amelia Clark. She was in that Terminator. She was,
right.
But so I've seen them in other movies and they fell flat.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, because with some of them, this was, really their first big role. And, it's really kind of hard to tell how much range they actually have. And Lena Headey, I remember her from Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles,
Sarah Connor Chronicles, yeah.
Which was very good, and I loved her in that.
Oh, that's funny. Both of them were in Terminators.
They were, yeah. Her and Amelia Clark, both. But when Amelia Clark tried to play a young Sarah Connor, it just didn't work for me, So yeah, I think it we'll see how their careers go. I mean, some of them, I think you'll probably have some of the the characters that you didn't really pay that much attention to in the series that will go on maybe to have bigger like film careers or TV careers than some of the main characters like Kit or some of these guys.
So Ford, what is your response to, do you have a response to the idea that like we don't really know what was happening in the background? It could be that all of the actors wanted to come back and do it, but just not with D&D or the way D&D were doing it.
Yeah, I do think that having more time to breathe would have been better. I agree with that, because episode 3 for me is the one. It was the first Game of Thrones episode that I was just like, what is this? Like, this is not right. Like, there's just so many things that jump out to you about that episode. That even if some of those things are twists that will be revealed like in the narrative later, that are just things that they've hidden or that Martin didn't want to release. There's so many like illogical things that the characters do or that play out that make you question all of it then. And I think that that's a lot of people's problems. There's so many bad things that kind of build up that even things that would normally be innocuous are people call attention to it.
Yeah, it snowballs.
It snowballs, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, people complaining about stuff that's just common production stuff. Like,
right.
The bricks thing, like, oh, when your writing is so bad that you can't walk 5 feet away from an avalanche. I'm like, guys, you're underground. The whole place is shaking. You don't know where the bricks are gonna fall. Like, it's just they've given up. Like, they're not.
What about Jaime's hand reappearing though?
What?
When he hugged Cersei at the end, he has 2 hands.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh, I think that was a production still. I think it didn't make it into the episode. It was a production still that got leaked.
Yeah, I mean, see, like, people are getting to that point of like, I mean, I honestly think the Starbucks cup was a troll. I think they did on purpose just to create memes. I'm serious. Like, you don't have 100 editors look at that shot and not notice it. I mean, when I'm editing YouTube videos, I notice every freaking like corner of the screen. You've got like people looking at dailies, rushes, and then at actual final edit. Yeah, right. I don't buy it, dude.
Well, so to go with your point, Ford, there is something to be said about, like, I always wanted, and I think Lost did this, the writers of Lost, they started putting things in to sort of to further the narrative, to further the mystery and the theories, to troll the viewers. And if that is what they're doing, so if it's just like a long con or a long something, so where we get the fulfillment in the next couple of books, or is it
Well, I was going to ask him a question, and I'm sorry, maybe this is your question, but I wasn't really clear on what you meant, Ford, by like George R. Martin not wanting something to be revealed. Like, are you saying that he held back information from D&D, or he told them but said?
Yep.
I
think he told them. He probably didn't tell them everything, but I think he did tell them so that they wouldn't put it in. And said, these are the things that you can have this, you can have this, you can have this, but you can't have this. And I mean, guys, he's a businessman. Like, he wants people to buy his books. So this is not the same thing as one of those like, oh, we're going to sell a companion book with a movie and then we're going to adapt it for a novelization. Like, that's.
See, I can't imagine it happen. It seems like with something like HBO, they would have just gotten the full rights to, like, okay, tell us what story you're going to write. I think he might have not known or held something back, but I can't. It's just hard for me to imagine it being a situation.
Yeah, I don't. Again, like, you probably need to do some more reading of their actual interactions, because I watched a video in which Martin said they had a meeting, their first meeting with D&D.
Yeah.
In a coffee shop or someplace, a cafe or something in LA. And they filled in the blanks. They knew who
he told them.
No, they told him.
Oh yeah.
So they went out for a steak dinner, and like towards the end of it, he asked them who Jon Snow's mother is, and so that was like a question of, do you know this material well enough, or have you invested in it well enough for me to trust you with my series?
Right. And is that explicitly revealed in the books at that point, Judah?
No.
Do you know?
No, it's not.
No.
It's been the R plus L equals J. That's been the meme.
See, and that's the thing. Martin is in code. He is a cryptographer. He's a storytelling cryptographer. He's embedding enough stuff in there for enterprising people to figure out what is going on. And that's why he takes so long, because he wants this to be interpreted properly. And so when people look at something like, I mean, the meme about Stannis the Manus, like Stannis would be the best king, like that shows that you don't understand what Martin's trying to say, because Martin makes jabs at Stannis throughout Storm of Swords. Like,
Right.
it's just, you constantly, like, Stannis is garbage. Like, I mean, he's worse than Robert. And so you just don't, if that's what you take away from it, oh, we need a strong king like Stannis, or if you're Ben Shapiro and say we need a strong king like Tywin Lannister, well, you don't understand what George R. R. Martin is saying, and you're not as smart as George R. R. Martin.
Yeah,
Like,
and I don't disagree with what you're saying about where, like, I think the books are headed toward the same ending.
Okay.
The original title for the 7th book, I know the 6th book isn't even, Winds of Winter isn't even out yet, but the original title for the 7th book, I believe, was A Time for Wolves. And then he changed it. I think he's changing it to a Dream of Spring. But when it came out that it was A Time for Wolves, I'm like, okay, I'm going to assume that the Starks, for all the stuff that they've been through, they make out pretty well in the end. And he's probably changing the title because the title is almost kind of a spoiler like that. So
right.
In the show, that is what we get. So,
and he told them the ending. He told D&D the ending.
Yeah. Basically, I'm just saying, I think, he basically, like, the farther down they went with the road, his points were just more general in terms of, like, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. I don't have all the, the details of how we get to here. And I think that's where kind of the show started to decline, was D&D had to start filling, the further they went, the bigger the gaps they had to start filling in.
I agree with that. And I do agree that those gaps are inarticulately handled in many points. But like I for one, like, loved episode 2 before the backfill.
Right, I did too. Yeah, episode 2.
So
yeah,
it's not all garbage. It just it all feels garbage in retrospect because of those moments that all set our teeth on edge. So for me, episode 3 just set my teeth on edge. I got to the end of that episode, I'm like, wow, I don't know. I was actually a little bit ambivalent until I saw maybe the Critical Drinker or one of those guys, one of their rants, and I was like, oh yeah, and then it just started piling on. But I think some of those guys have gotten into such a rut of just seeing everything as stupid that they're being really silly at this point. I mean,
yeah. So what did you think of you? I talked to you offline. So you didn't like episode 3, didn't like episode 4, but then episode 5 kind of got you back on track. And then what did you think of the finale itself?
Okay, so by analogy, when Star Wars Last Jedi came out, like, I hated Last Jedi because I hated Force Awakens. Like, I hated Force Awakens. So it was like, he would have had to have unwrite Force Awakens in order for me to like Last Jedi. And so that's kind of how you feel about season 8. It's like, let's just start from scratch here, boys. Like, that's how I felt about Force Awakens and Last Jedi. Like, whatever good things, quote unquote, that were in Last Jedi, like, even if they had been good, it's like, I don't accept the premise. So I do understand what you're saying, where you're coming from. For me, I was able just to say episodes 3 and 4 are not quite 100% canon. They fumbled. But they're back on track now with episode 5 for me. Like, I just try to forget about, but see, I'd already done that because we went back and watched season 7 where she saves them, on the ice lake. That is just a mess.
Yes.
That whole thing is a mess. John does the stupidest stuff in that scene. Like, it's so annoying. That scene is bad. So, but I forgot it. Like, okay, well, here we are. We're ready. We're ready to go to King's Landing. Like, at least I forgot it, and let's just willing suspension of disbelief. I was able to willing suspension of disbelief the stupidity of Euron being able to shoot that dragon, like, out of nowhere again. Like, and that's where y'all are right. It's like they're the ones being babies. It's like, oh, if our camera's not pointed at it, it doesn't exist, or they can't see it. Like, what's Are they making a commentary about the fourth wall here? Like, the stupidity of the dragon not seeing this
plot armor.
Yeah, it is. That's just super silly. And then, like you said, so when you get to episode 6 or 5 and see Drogon like being impossible to kill, being so ridiculously overpowered.
The start of the finale. Well, yeah, no, yeah, it was
It was
the
no,
it's episode 5.
the bells.
That's right.
Yeah, there's good. So when she comes flying in, now some people have hung a lantern on the fact that apparently George R.R. Martin wrote a book called Blood and Sand or something like that. It's like a throwback to the Targaryens' reign. It's like a history of the Targaryens or something like that. And it is apparent that the different dragons have different skill levels, and they have power rankings in their own right. Like one is not as good as another, and Drogon is kind of the top dog. Mm-hmm. So, and there's something to that Targaryen rage, I think. But yeah, it seems very incongruous when juxtaposed with the might of Euron in the previous episode. So there are a lot of convenient things, I agree, that are just, but I just choose to say they messed that up. And I'm just going to suspend my disbelief because I agree with Daenerys being a badass on a dragon.
I agree with you.
I agree that she can do that she doesn't need 2 more to do it. I don't agree with how she lost her other 2. Yeah.
So I want to remind you guys that I actually made a case back in episode 4 saying that, like, look, it's still a beautiful show. It still has interesting characters. I'm still in it for the experience, but I think it got worse when you had stupid things like Drogon burning the plot armor type stuff, where it's just because of the plot is contrived.
Right.
He's burning the Iron Throne. Why?
Well, and I wasn't sure if Ford sent me. We were talking last night, and he was sending me part of what his take was on that, and I wasn't sure if you were being serious or not, Ford, about the Bran warging thing.
No, I was.
You were? Okay.
Yeah.
So I found a thing today. I gotta find it real quick. Shoot, where's it at? Okay. This is what someone else wrote, because that theory's out there. They wrote, Bran warging into a dragon did not happen, and here's why. As bad as Benioff and Weiss, or D&D, have become as storytellers, their particular brand is to explicitly tell viewers what the heck is going on at all times. Of all the things they lack, subtlety is one of them. And there were no hints, subtle or otherwise, that Bran was in control of Drogon at any point. If D&D wanted Bran's warging to matter in this late stage of the game, they would have included a visual clue, a close-up shot of the eyes, a hard cut from Bran to the animal's face, even just a glimpse of Drogon's eyes glazed over and white, like Hodor's when Bran warged into the gentle giant. Okay, and that was my confusion too, because like it seems like if they had wanted you, like it would have just been easy to have seen his eyes glaze over.
Yeah, but Bran is not the Bran that he was when he was warging into Hodor. We haven't seen Bran warg since he became the Three-Eyed Raven. We're in new territory.
We have. No. When he, at the end of the season 7 finale, when he wargs the crows to go fly over the wall and look, he's the eyes glaze then, and they also glaze. See, I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's the time. I know that time.
I understand, but once again, well, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because we don't see it, I mean. So who is that? I want to know this person so I can tweet at them. I'm going to go ahead and tweet at them now. You're wrong. Mark this date.
It wasn't Twitter. It was in an article. I'd have to go back and find.
All right, find me the article because I'm going to call them out, and then we'll. Okay. And then maybe that'll get me their job because they're garbage.
Ford, what evidence do you have that Bran is warging into Drogon other than your desire for him to be warging into Drogon?
The desire? No. It's just observation. It says hypothesis. Okay. I have no vested interest in this. I'm not like a diehard Bran fan. I'm a fan of the Hound. No, I'm not bitching because the Hound dove into the fire. I mean, I'm not sitting here like, oh man, I can't wait until Bran ends up on the Iron Throne.
I know.
I just think people have this like.
What are you observing? What do you observe that makes you think that?
Because the show, the entire instigating action of everything in Game of Thrones is not the Night King and dragons. It's not the Lord of Light and the Lord of Ice. It's Jaime kicking a kid out of a window. This show is not about kings. It's about people who get crapped on by kings. That's what this show's about. It's about cripples, bastards, and broken things.
Okay. What does that have to do with him warging into Drogon, though? It culminates that whole idea?
I'm saying that there are numerous little weird things that happen and we haven't been able to explain, and it is totally within the show and the books, like history, that things are unexpected. Stuff is not what it seems. Oh, that looks like one person, but no, it's a faceless man posing as someone else. There's stuff happening these last 2 seasons that has not been outright revealed, in the same way that R plus L equals J was never outright revealed. But D&D, dumb as they were able to figure that out when a lot of people couldn't figure it out. So I'm saying that y'all are giving too much credit to D&D here. George R.R. Martin still had some control there. He still had some. He didn't have all control. He did not like what they did to Littlefinger, and I totally agree. Like how Littlefinger does garbage. The way they handled that was terrible. I still believe he's alive in the books, or part of me thinks he's actually still alive, and that was another sleight of hand. But they never show anything. I'm telling you, some of this is going to be. This is not a traditional storytelling end of a show, because they're going to have spinoffs, and also there are more books to be written. This is not a traditional adaptation. That's what I'm saying. When it comes to why Bran, what the heck is that horse doing in King's Landing? You think that horse could survive all that and then just come up to Arya? That's Bran warging.
See, I think that was a visual decision in the same way that killing the Dothraki was a visual decision. I think that's a good hypothesis too.
Bran warged into the Dothraki.
Right, yeah, maybe. No, but I think they've just kind of that. But the thing is, that horse, if we think about what purpose does the horse serve, we don't know. We don't have any indication that that Arya needed to get out especially quickly from where she was there. We don't have any indication that Daenerys is coming back to that area. So I think it was like, this will be a beautiful scene. Arya is, sort of this embodiment of death. We've got the pale horse. This will be a beautiful visual scene. Now, maybe there's more to it, but I think, when it's kind of, completely open to interpretation, but
my point is, it's not open to interpretation. It's open to there will be a shelf date on this. Like when the books come out, then these people can say, oh, without a matter of fact, matter of total fact. Everyone needs to say this is a hypothesis, just like I'm saying. Like these statements of fact that all these reaction videos are saying, they were saying they'll go back and find one thing that they said right about, this is going to happen in season 7. They said 28 other things, and none of them turned out to be true. And they latched on that one thing that they said was true. And there's just the thing that they were bitching about that particular season. So I'm just saying, these y'all's are hypotheses just as much as mine is. I do think, I agree with you. They bungled a lot, and it could be just like the Dothraki, that it's just for visual. It's just like, oh, we're going to have this great moment. And I will say this too, the stupidity of the fact that, it looked like the Dothraki were, didn't we all think that they were all gone? There was like 5 left.
Yes.
They respawned in episode 5.
Well, see, yeah, and that's part of the problem. If you the inside the episode from after the Battle of Winterfell, Benioff says what we see is essentially the end of the Dothraki. When they all charge out, he's basically saying, they all die. Now he says essentially, so, but so I thought, okay, yeah, for all intents and purposes, maybe like those 10 stragglers survive. But then we go back. Yeah, exactly.
Like, how many of them were there?
Exactly.
There was like rows of them.
Exactly.
Like 500, 1,000, 10,000.
And so this is the kind of thing that when I see that, I can't give them the benefit of the doubt on legitimate questions that I have. I get what you're saying about people like taking the nitpicks too far.
I agree.
But to Ford's point,
the number of Unsullied is it's unconscionable how bad that is. Like
But
the number of Unsullied is ridiculous.
that might be to your point, Ford, in which Martin has he has the last laugh, he has the last word, and he says, I want this to happen, I want this to happen, and this has to happen. And they have to hit all those beats. That maybe he even said before she dies, Danny has to be before her hordes. And so then D&D just kind of filled in the gaps clumsily, as it were. And they're just not good writers.
Well,
And
they're
so
just they're not good at patching it together. And that's why I use that example of Joss Whedon having to write Avengers, and, Feige and all them, they had certain beats he had to hit. We need to do this. And basically his job was to be a seamstress, to act without showing the seams, get these events to seem surprising but inevitable. And you're right, Jerry. I mean, there's so much of these gaps that just are you're just jarring how the juxtapositions of these images. It seems like there's like 150 Unsullied left when they leave Winterfell, and then all of a sudden there's 30,000. It doesn't look like any of them are dead.
Well, yeah, they said that they said half of them. There's a like a very subtle line that I think I had to watch a second time to catch, but in episode 4, when they're talking about their troops, they say that they lost half of the Unsullied. How did they not lose? And there's like 8,000 Unsullied, or I think she got 8,000 Unsullied. And so that would leave like 4,000 left.
Well, that could have been 4,000.
And I think, again, that's, well, I'm not going to critique that too much. I think there's numerous reasons why they did that. But so,
okay. But if that is what happened, if they have points they hit that they had to do for Martin, okay, if that and it will all be filled in when Martin writes his books, I still hate it.
Yeah,
I still hate it until I read the book.
Yeah, I'm agreeing that I think they did have. Again, I think that's what happened. I think they had. He gave them points that they had to hit. I'm just disagreeing on. I don't think there was anything that he told them but said you can't use. I don't think the agreement would have worked that way.
I guess we'll agree to disagree until the full story's out.
He's gonna die, dude.
We're gonna die. You're right.
Sanderson will take over.
All this what?
Sanderson
takes over. It's fine, man. He'll get it right.
So what about yeah, there was one thing that I was seeing where this one video was I was kind of laughing at it. This guy was very nitpicky, like overly nitpicky too. But one point he made that I did laugh at that that I think is completely true is that the writer's best friend this season was Mr. Offscreen. And that Mr. Offscreen rescued them numerous times. Like,
that's true. That's definitely true.
That's George R. Martin. George R. Martin is Mr. Offscreen.
That's true. He does that too.
But it's like bad this season. It
was bad.
Arya flying off, from off screen. That Euron's bolt from off screen.
Well, and even like the Battle of Winterfell, where again there's that one overhead shot where like Jorah's fighting 2 dead, and then like five of them rush at Dany from the other side, and then they cut away and they come back and they're fine. That's true. I did get a little bit of a kick out of that.
That's legit. That's a legit joke.
And in movie making, I think that's okay though. Off screen can help us fill the gaps with our imagination.
It can, but not the way in the 3 cases we just described. Especially that one. Like, that one's just so glaring. We need to get. I think one of the problems too is we're in an age where we have been inoculated to movie magic.
Yeah.
It's like, you're cheating. Come on, let's see. We want to see the one-shot take, baby. I want to see this actually happen. You want to see it earned again. That earning. You got to have some stakes here, baby. Man.
Yeah. Earned is a word that's been used a lot with this. Right. And we're we just continually become a more discerning audience. We've seen so much.
And that's good. I mean,
it is.
So what about this choice that they made? It was revealed that they made the choice to kill Jorah, where I don't think he'll be killed in the books. While he's defending Dany, and in fact, they had an alternate scene at the end where he he takes over for the Mormonts.
Oh, I did not see any of this.
Yeah, and so they made the decision, and actually, so it makes more sense when he is defending Danny against like he's still on her side, but he sees her do things, and he's he has that moral conundrum. He takes on a lot of the stuff that Tyrion takes on. So Tyrion takes over for some of the things, some of his positions in that political jockeying, and that's what I missed. To me, that's
you're right.
Game of Thrones, political intrigue, stuff that happens. You're like, whoa, wait, that makes sense, but I never saw it coming.
The verbal fisticuffs were real good. I mean, even going back, I hated the Sparrow. Okay, I just hated that guy. But I went back and watched his verbal sparring with Olenna Tyrell, and I was like, oh, that was not bad. Like, he has a nice little punchline at the end of that scene. I was like, that's pretty good, dude. And I mean, his punchline to Cersei was good. You're right. The verbal fireworks, the verbal fisticuffs, that kind of it's very like British wit.
It was truncated.
Well, there was none of that this season almost.
Well, and here's my problem with Bran taking the throne in the Game of Thrones. Realistically, for their world, Bran is maybe the best possible choice for king. He's either the best possible choice or he's the worst possible choice, because he's super evil and he's allowed a bunch of terrible things to happen just for him to seize power. So he's either great or terrible. But if he really is this sort of benevolent ruler, then he would be the best possible choice. However, here's my problem with that. This is something else that I kind of wrote. I've written so many of these things that I'm just collecting them rather than try to speak them off the cuff. But so with Danny, we got some very pointed commentary about cheering leaders who rise to power through brutality, even if it's initially against evil people. We get commentary about how that can get out of control. And that makes sense. Every story has to teaches a moral, and in a show like Game of Thrones, it's going to teach multiple morals. Tyrion was talking about all the things that Danny did that they cheered her for, and really he was talking about the audience. I think it was Kit Harington or one of the actors said, you guys are just as much at fault. You cheered her on. And Tyrion might as well have just turned around and looked at the camera when he was saying all that. And that's fine. That's fine. However, what is the takeaway that we're supposed to have from this story? To elect an omniscient, no longer really even human, has the emotional range of a potato leader, because we don't really have any of those lying around in the real world.
Agreed.
So, I wanted to see them have to make a choice about, even if it's a rough choice, even if it's not really going to make them better off in the long run, but Bran just gives them an out for so many things. And again, maybe this is is just a case of D&D not being able to write him the way George is going to, and make his role in the story believable. But if George does things the same way, I just hate these. They're called Omega characters in comics, because it's like a Jean Grey or a Professor X who can just control everything. And that's why every X-Men movie has to like neutralize Professor X, because in reality, if he had his powers, he could just mind control everything and fix everything. So, I hate having a character like that, because it gives you so many outs, and to use him as the guy who sits on the throne in the end.
Oh, okay.
So that bugged me.
Okay. Then that does change my theory quite a bit. Okay. So it's one of two things. One, it's a happy ending, in which case, if it's a happy ending, then everything I said about Bran warging couldn't have happened, because he has to be like God at that point. He can't directly intervene and change people's free will. Like, he can only see, but if he interacts, and that's why he has to be a potato, he can do things that he could do normally as a human being, or otherwise he will, basically play with space time. It's like the Back to the Future thing. You can't see yourself or whatever. So if it's a happy ending, then he can't warg anything. And in that case, everyone's right. It's just stupid. Or maybe he can only warg things like, crows to see. Like it's just, you know, it's basically observational. But he can't really mess with the fabric of human free will and stuff like that. But it's entirely possible that Martin is giving another kind of warning here, because again, we're looking at the evolution of England from the War of the Roses into a more parliamentary, benevolent king that's not predicated on violence quite as much, you know, not as much overt violence. So we're moving from warlords, warriors, to more of a, you know, smarter, more circumspect sort of leadership. And then they hung a lantern. It was kind of funny, like when Samwell brings up democracy, and they're like, like they hung a lantern on it. They're like, no, we're not going there, you idiot.
Right.
So it's, you know, the evolution is actually kind of slow. So we're not leaving from kingdoms, but we're moving to kingdoms that aren't predicated on the Game of Thrones the way it's been played. But if Martin is doing the bad ending, he's showing that, and this would be conversant with the rest of what he's written. When you read Varys and Littlefinger in the books, you realize they're the most dangerous characters in this whole show, or in this whole book. They're more dangerous than Dany. They're more dangerous than Cersei. And Bran is like the uber version of them. And as far as what does he have, like what type of thing could be like that in our existence? Well, a government with technology. I mean, our government sees everything we do. The government controls the Iron Bank. Like Cersei doesn't get to control the Iron Bank. So, I mean, if that's where he's going, and Martin talks a lot about freedom. You know, he does talk a lot about freedom. And so it could be a warning, like, look, hey, we got out of the Game of Thrones, but guess what? Your new leader, your crippled FDR is gonna throw the Japanese in internment camps. Just because the person's not strong doesn't mean that he's not wily, you know? Right. So the Game of Thrones doesn't end. It just looks less violent. But you could be right. Maybe he is bad.
Well, the other thing too, and I'm not sure if this influences you or your opinion, or how if you'd already seen this, but I saw an interview with Isaac Hempstead Wright, you know, the kid who plays Bran, and he said, I guess I took it as the note that he got for this. It could have just been him coming up with his own explanation, but he said it pretty matter of factly, was that, like, if you go back to the Godswood, when Bran tells Theon, you're a good man, he's not doing anything for Theon. There's no emotion behind it. His only purpose is that he has seen Arya's coming to save him, and he needs to buy more time. He thinks Theon might run again, like he has so many times, and so he specifically tells him that just to give him the courage to go get killed by the Night King and buy 30 more seconds or so.
Interesting. You remember the last time that Bran has a conversation with the forest, the river? What's her name?
Mira Reed.
Ooh, yeah. Man, that was a devastating scene.
Yes.
It's good stuff, man. And so I do really think that Bran is the key to this in more ways than one. But the way you put that, maybe that's what it is. It's a commentary on, just because the state isn't sitting on bayonets, isn't sitting on swords anymore, doesn't mean that it's not nefarious. Because Littlefinger's nefarious, man. Varys is nefarious.
Well, it's even more nefarious because you get into the Minority Report. You know, this
exactly. Yes. That's where we're heading. We're heading.
I said the other day, I'm like, Bran was like the first precog.
You're right. Exactly. And no, that's incredibly prescient. We're almost there, y'all. I mean, we may have already been there. You know that Peter Thiel's new company is called freaking Palantir, okay? And you know what he does? Big data mining for the government. That's what he does. He left PayPal to go be the Eye of Sauron.
Wow.
It's insane, dude. And he called it Palantir. Like, how, like, are you not? I don't know. I guess he figured, well, somebody else is going to do it. It might as well be me.
Ooh, I just now made that connection. Three-eyed raven, Eye of Sauron. What if it's the evil eye?
Dude, see, yeah, because Martin does reference quite a bit of Tolkien-like stuff. I mean, Arya is basically going on the Dawn Treader here.
Yeah.
Lewis Tolkien. I mean, it's all there.
Mm.
Ooh, I like Three-Eyed Raven. Okay, all right. So there's some stuff to be gained. I don't think it's a lost cause.
It's
You know what
not.
I mean?
Right. No,
We're gonna. I finally agree with my daughter to let her watch it, so we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back and watch. We're gonna start from the beginning. Guess I'll have to preface every hold the sheet over the screen.
Sheesh.
Yeah, well, she's very well educated in anime, so I think she's been pretty much uninnocentized. But anyway, I think it is worth like, man, some of the verbal fisticuffs with Varys and certain characters in these early seasons. There's just good stuff there. There's good stuff about human nature, about politics, about maneuver, the art of maneuver, about navigating difficult dilemmas. And all the characters teach you a little bit about that. I mean, Cersei, I mean, she's in some ways, she's one of my favorite characters, not because I like her approach, but there's things that she's very smart about, you know?
Absolutely.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing that kind of bugs me, even though I can see this. Well, some of this I can see Martin doing for the books. And, you know, like Jon Snow is so sidelined this season. He has really nothing to do except, I mean, the big thing, killing Dany. But I think it was made worse by, I think it could go that way in the books, but I think it'll be better because Martin will give him better dialogue than "my queen" and I don't want it, you know, because those were his 2 lines. Those were his 2 lines in season 8. And so, you know, is that a plane going over somebody's?
That's me.
Oh, okay. So that really, I mean, I understand what you're saying about the storytelling format and this not being that kind of story. That does bug me about Jon, Dany, and Cersei, all, you know, kind of 3 of the main characters for the show being sidelined. But I think it may still happen. Well, Dany wasn't sidelined, but Jon and Cersei were really sidelined. What did Cersei do?
No, but
you know?
but that's the thing. They'd run out of options. I mean, Jon is like Ned. He's like Eddard. He's a warrior. He's a good man. He's an honorable man. He's not a tactician. He's not smart in those ways. He's smart on the battlefield at the front, but he's not smart from leading behind the scenes. He's not one of those people that has those verbal fisticuffs. Everyone from the beginning, Jaime makes a fool of him. There's a great scene, like Jaime makes a fool of him. I think Tyrion kind of makes a fool of him, and it cuts to Jon. Everyone's inside partying. This is like in episode 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And he looks at his little dummy, you know, that he's working on his sword play with. And everyone else is doing the political Game of Thrones ramifications and having fun, and he's out there just hitting a dummy. And you see he's pissed. And the thing is, he's a good man because he channeled that being pissed into honor. And so I feel like he ends up where he truly wants in the end. And if you remember, Aemon he's one of the Targaryens, and he was one of the best people in the show. The old guy, the old Targaryen,
the Maester,
Maester. And but that's where you need a Targaryen. You need them somewhere where they're not going to be. I think that's the metaphor he's trying to get across. You do not want someone who is a berserker. You do not want a warlord berserker on the throne because they will not. I'm a berserker. All right. So I don't think you're a berserker as much as me, Jared, in terms of like the rage, not channeling it in proper ways. And like, you don't want that person sitting on a throne.
No, but that's why I think Jon would have been a great king, a reluctant king.
I don't think so.
I think if he had the right advisors, but I agree with Ford. Okay, so that's another thing. Is like
basically no, never mind. I'll go ahead.
Now I was just gonna say like people keep saying like, oh, you know, you're just mad because it didn't end the way you wanted. Honestly, I was good. If we're just thinking about where all the characters ended up, I'm good with just about every character's ending, except Dany's. I even think, you know, Dany will play out the same way in the books, and you can make that make sense. But I'm not good with her ending in the show because I don't think they earned that. Other than that, and the other thing is, with Bran becoming king and Sansa saying, the North's going to be an independent kingdom. Like, well, that was Yara's whole deal with Dany, was that the Iron Islands would remain its own independent kingdom. So why does she not bring that up? And why does everyone else, Dorne, which has been the most independent of all the kingdoms, why would they not say, no, we'll just do our own thing? So I think, like, realistically in the show, people wouldn't be like, oh yeah, we'll vote in Bran. They would just be like, yeah, let's just break the kingdoms apart.
Yeah, I could see that. I think especially like you said, with all the compression that they had to do, that it doesn't feel earned. They didn't have time to actually win these people over.
Right.
It does feel tacked on. I grant that. I think with Dorne, they might have stayed in just for the access in terms of trade and other things that they were lacking in. I could see Dorne staying, but yeah, you're right. I mean, if she made that deal with Dany, it's like, well, that deal, I'm not saying that it's moot. I mean,
right.
Bran just let the North go free. Well, we're going free too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know me, I'll be a good ally, but I ain't beholden to you.
Yeah. How come she didn't? Like,
That's a good point. Good question. Yeah, good point.
They just kind of forgot.
Okay. As far as that, I'll do a quick rant real quick on that.
Yeah. I've got, well, oh yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. One quick rant from me and one quick rant from you. So, in regards to these complaints, these memes on the internet, one of them is like, my face when I see Sir Brienne close the book before the ink has dried. Or another one, John gets up the stairs and there's a Grey Worm. It's like, wait a minute, I just left you back there. How'd you get up here? Oh, D&D forgot. Film editing, noun, a mysterious technique that somehow eludes the cognitive abilities of people on the internet, in which events, actions, and sequences are compressed to make it less boring. The goal of film editing was to cut to the chase, get to the action. But for millions of cinematically illiterate crybabies, such a magical act is incomprehensible. How did Grey Worm beat John to the top of the stairs? Can he teleport now? No, John would have been kept waiting while the Queen awakened from a dragon nap. Through the magic of film editing, the showrunners thought you had enough sense to realize that people don't get audiences with kings or queens on this show without making it through security. The king will see you now, the queen will see you now. The only mistake the showrunners made here is assuming you have actual brains instead of mob-fused hive minds that can't understand anything in the show without being spoon-fed every single action on screen. Don't worry, the books are coming out. You can all pretend to care about boring minutia again when you talk about reading the books, but skip past Martin's 43rd chapter of banality posing as character development. Doesn't Brienne know ink needs to dry? Cut too early and you complain that we don't get to see the end of the scene because your pea-brains haven't learned to fill in the blanks. Cut a shot in the middle of the scene, Bree waiting for ink to dry so we can get to the punchline, closing the book, a metaphor for finality. And you imbeciles gripe about getting the punchline because we didn't get to sit there and stare at ink drying.
So
it's almost. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. You're not done. Okay.
It's
yeah.
almost like people watching Game of Thrones have forgotten that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Like they're babies who think that because a writer does not hang a lantern on every single possible point of exposition, that they cease to exist. I mean, normally, don't we complain about too much exposition? It only happens if I can see it. I guarantee the reason that you can't see it is Martin's fault. He wants to build up suspense so you will be able to see what Bran was warging this whole time and how he's playing chess with everyone. The last time we were able to see his true power was when he received the revelation of Jon's origin and when the Night King found him, and that one that you mentioned. He also does warg the Ravens in season 8. I do grant that.
And he wargs into the Dothrakis.
The Dothraki do seem pretty dumb. They might be on Hodor level. I don't know.
Oh, shit. Redact that. From then on, it's all hidden, not by the writer. Well, the right way they write it, that's true. From then on, it's all hidden, not by the writers being too lazy to let you inside Bran's head, but because Martin wants you to buy the books and find out what happened. Why did Drogon burn the Iron Throne? Because Bran warged him, you twit. Why did the horse magically show up for Arya? Because Bran warged it. These things that feel like meaningless, trivial wastes of precious screen time are going to fit together like puzzle pieces once you have the rest of the expositional story when GRRM is done. I personally don't love Martin's languid pace, but I respect the man's dedication and sense for human motivation. And I think that with all its failure, the last 2 seasons will age much better in the light of Martin's finished books. If he finishes them, Gods be good.
Okay, so Ford sent me this last night, and so I had time to write a troll of him.
Okay,
and so like this is lighthearted, you know. So I said, so I was gonna say, You're just defending it because that's what you do. Inevitably, when you think criticism of something has gone too far, you take this contrarian approach to defending it. If tomorrow aliens landed and attacked Earth, initially you'd be against them. And then within a month, you'd read all the online criticism of the aliens, you'd watch one too many YouTube rants, and you'd do a complete 180 on the subject. You'd say, you know what? No. Who do these little online warriors think they are to criticize beings that are smart enough to develop interstellar travel, beings dedicated enough to fly across the flippin' galaxy to get here? You don't think maybe they know just a little bit more than you do? Maybe we should withhold judgment until we see the full picture of their motives. And so what? And so what if these aliens turn out to be purely inherently evil? Maybe it'll take oppressive alien overlords to finally be a sledgehammer of truth, come to shatter your mental utopias of pseudo-intellectual Marxist ideology. I'm not done. You think human beings are so great? Maybe you need to take a look back at, I don't know, the entire history of our species. Because let me tell you, pal, we've basically been a cancer on the planet from the time we got here. The first two people that God put on this planet disobeyed the one command that he gave them almost immediately. And what did their children do? Well, they didn't waste any time introducing homicide into the world. It's been a downhill slide ever since. So yeah, I'm on the alien side now. I hope they wipe us out.
Oh man, spot on.
Dude, that's psychology degree. Hey, man, you might be the next GRM, dude. You should just start writing that kind of thing.
I can write people. Yeah, I can write people.
Oh, that's good, dude.
Oh man, that was spot on. Yes. All right. Well, on that note,
all right.
Can we agree to move on from Game of Thrones until 10 years from now when the book comes out?
When the book comes out, maybe we can have a little retrospective. I mean, we don't all have to read it, but I mean, we could parse it. I mean, I'll probably read it if you want to just read like Cliff Notes, and then we can. Yeah, it would be fun. I think at that point to revisit it. It'd be a while.
Yeah.
If the book comes out,
I have a proposition in the wake of Game of Thrones. Let's just make our own myth. I mean, let's just jump into it, like for real. Like for real, let's just jump into it. I mean, I know Jared's working on stuff. I've had a little idea I've wanted to do for a while, a pet project. And
okay, so, yeah. I've been thinking about this.
Okay.
Can we do a Paper Pals episode 9? Or season 9?
Oh.
Jared writes it.
Oh,
you do the Paper Pals.
What is Paper Pals?
No, we all three have to write it.
I don't have to. You guys write it.
Okay, me and Jared can write it. Oh well, we'd really get into hashing this out. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, we would. I mean, I'm legitimately all for it. Like, again, I don't feel like season 8 is canon. I'm, and that's not. I don't think that's just me being like, no, I refuse to accept this.
I actually, this could be fun. Okay, so what Paper Pals was, there was this guy one time. He made these Downton Abbey paper cutouts, and so like you could print them off. And I was watching it with my wife at the time, and the guy, he just included some kind of fun thing. It was just a funny thing. He did it for Vulture. It was like an official blog post.
Oh, okay.
And so I printed them out, and then I wrote an episode called Downton Abbey Paper Pals, and it was actually getting ahead of the story. But I actually did some pretty good voiceovers for him. Like some of them are pretty good. My Matthew Crawley, spot on, baby.
Nice.
But anyways, we had a lot of fun doing it.
I will commit. If we write this and get it hashed out, I will commit to flying out to Florida to actually film it.
No, you don't have to fly, dude. We can do it in front of our webcam. That's what's great about Paper Pals.
I know, but wouldn't it be fun to do it together, all three of us?
That would be a lot of fun. Yeah. So hey, I mean I'll show you one of the episodes. I did another one for a Bollywood movie.
I love them.
It's real easy. There's no production value, and you can just focus on jokes.
Oh, okay.
You just
So,
you just
all
hold
three
up.
of us. I mean, to the degree that we all want, we could do the voiceovers. And it'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds awesome.
Here,
Okay.
I've got some
Okay.
paper pals. Me and my clients did paper pals for like this bizarro Ninja Turtles. This is
Oh, nice. Nice. One of those, like the one on well, now he's in the middle.
Oh,
Where's he going? Yeah, the one on the right could be Drogon.
Which one? The one on the right?
Or on my right, your left. Yeah.
Well, this is Satan.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So let's do it. Can we do it? That would be great.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's. Hey, that sounds good. All right. Let me. I'll share those videos with you. Like, I think the thing is, you want it to be real short, so that it's not taxing to any of us, and we just take our time with it. And the great thing is, we could build up towards we could take as long as we want, really. And
yeah.
And when the book comes out, we can come out with the whole season or something.
Yeah, I mean, Game of Thrones is just part of life. I mean, the prequel's coming out next year. The books will, at least, I think he'll get the next book out. I don't know if he'll ever get the last book out, but yeah, Game of Thrones is just going to be part of life for the foreseeable future.
Star Wars for adults for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you guys. That was a rough man. That was one of my favorite episodes to at least do.
Exceeded expectations. Well done, Jared. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Till next time. Get out there. There's a lot to build.
Make your own myth.
Winter is canceled.